Welcome to the Therapist Book Club, where two therapists dive into their favorite books and the powerful mental health themes they uncover.
Whether you're here for literary inspiration, therapeutic tools, or just some lighthearted conversation, you've found the right place.
So get cozy and let's dive into the pages together. Welcome back. We're talking today about one of my, I would say, most used books in my therapy office, Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. Actually, I've never read the byline, Mapping Meaningful Connection in the Language of Human Experience. And I know you and I have talked about this. This book I purchased it. So I listened to it and then I purchased it. I think it is beautiful. She has illustrations that are really meaningful in there. Um, this is one of my favorite illustrations too. So when we add empathy to shame and judgment, these droppers are judgments, secrecy and silence. It fuels our shame. When we add empathy to it, it all shrinks up.
I just love Brené Brown because she does such a great job of putting really technical language into easy, understandable, little nuggets to walk away with.
I loved, yes. This is the one that I think deviates a little bit. I love listening to her, Gifts of Imperfection. She doesn't read that one. It's read by somebody else. I think it makes unless there's a newer version or whatever, but when I listened to it, it wasn't her. It makes such a big difference when you listen to her because she's real. She lives her authenticity. I don't know, she talks to you in a very conversating kind of way. So the one warning I would say for this book is sometimes people will pick it up and my clients will try to read it from start to finish. I don't think it's that kind of book. You called it a dictionary.
I see it as a dictionary, something you can pick up and say, I'm dealing with this. I think she breaks it up into different categories of when I'm dealing with this category, go here, and she guides you in different
yeah. Each chapter is the places we go when we're uncertain, the places we go when we compare. I will tell you, my book opens straight to the places we go when things are uncertain and too much, life about stress. And it opens directly to the places we go when we're hurting.
Yep.
So
therapy.
Yes. I use this book probably so any therapist listening right now, I use this book every single day in my therapy office.
Probably more helpful than that dang DSM
that we have to pay royalties to use.
Yeah.
I just for a little for the therapists out there, they're yeah, but for the people listening, we are required to utilize these things and yet we pay royalties on it. I don't know. Doesn't system's broken.
Nada.
So yeah, there's so many nuggets in it. When I read it personally, I did feel like it was hard to do start to finish. I would read them in chunks. I wanted to sit and read through the places we go when we're uncertain and understand that before I moved on to the next chunk. So there's always, I love Christian counselors always are you read the Bible because you'll get so many messages from rereading, right? This is my Bible. In the therapy office, this is my Bible. And depending on where I'm at in life, I swear I get something new out of rereading it. My clients know I have a hyper fixation of the month. And I'll have a self-help book on, it's longer than a month. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll replay it and then they'll just hear me constantly. I'm well, in Atlas of the Heart. And they just know that's my hyperfixation. But I love to play it and listen to it over and over and over. And I hear it through the lens of me as a person, as a therapist, as a parent, as somebody who's experienced trauma in my life. I just hear it in those different ways. And then I don't know about you. If you ever hear something that connects with you, then I'm oh, I have these clients that I want to tell you about. I'm so excited to tell you.
All the time. And it's always around a book I'm reading.
Yes. So that is me.
Or a TikTok I saw.
Yes. A TED Talk too. I know. Or a podcast. Sometimes that gets me too.
I kind of related this book to almost a feelings wheel. Like,
Yeah.
those wheels that have
Yeah.
like all the emotions, and in the core is like those things that we learn as a kid, like I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling mad, I'm feeling scared. But then as you branch out of the feeling circle, the language gets more complex and more narrowed in and specific to what you're feeling. And you can get more granular with like explaining how you're feeling and describing how you're feeling based on the actual scenario you're experiencing. So it's not just I'm sad. No, I'm actually disappointed. And you
Mhm.
can get
What
more.
does that mean?
Yes.
Mhm.
So I love I'm relating the two. It's like expanding my vocabulary and my clients' vocabulary of being able to describe and really understand what it is that we're experiencing.
Mhm.
And knowing what we're experiencing helps us to, I think, move past that or to accept it, or like just the knowing of it and being able to put language to it is very healing.
Because for anyone that hasn't read this, I think the reason why that looks like that is they're all pretty much every emotion you can think of on that feelings wheel is categorized into one of the chapters.
Yeah.
And so I am totally with you. I can pull open, if we're talking about, let's see, chapter 8 is the places we go when we fall short. And that has perfectionism in there.
Mhm.
But we can't talk about perfectionism without shame and self compassion.
Mhm.
And that's because they are the complementary colors of the
Yes.
wheel.
Mhm.
And so all of that becomes in there. I like, she also puts humiliation, guilt, and embarrassment
Mhm.
in there for perfectionism. So if you experience, like, if you're part of that club, this chapter 8 is for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're gonna have to talk about, like, and actually it's one of her guideposts in the Gifts of Imperfection that,
Mhm.
when she talks about, it's guidepost number 2, uh,
Mhm.
cultivating self-compassion, and yet she spends the whole chapter talking, or the whole guidepost talking about perfectionism.
Mhm.
That, the antidote to perfectionism isn't stop it. It's self-compassion, accepting
Yeah.
us for who we are, and treating it like being our own best friend
Mhm.
in there. I love it. So do you remember you remember her example of waitressing, right?
Yes.
That one speaks to people.
The way it speaks to me is related to parenthood and motherhood, of
Mhm.
like when I have reached my limits. Will you explain the analogy and then maybe we can
Yeah,
get into it?
yeah. So this is in chapter 1.
Mhm.
The analogy is, she talks about being a waitress in a restaurant and the demands that waitressing, or what, serving, I should say, be more inclusive, but the demands that serving has, and that there was 2 levels that they would discuss, and she was discussing stressed and overwhelmed,
Mhm.
and she related, stressed to being in the weeds.
Mhm.
Like, there were times where, you had to run food here and there, and somebody could just, yeah, if you could just run this really quick to that spot, that would help me. I could get out of the weeds.
Mhm.
But so I'm stressed. I've got some big demands I'm trying to meet, and I'm struggling to keep up,
Mhm.
but I can still manage.
Yeah.
Maybe even with just I still need maybe even a little support. But then she talks about a term that she learned there, um, being in the weeds. And if somebody were to be in the weeds, that was code for your manager to stop what they're doing.
Wait, in the weeds is I'm stressed but not overwhelmed. What's the other one?
Oh, I'm sorry, blown.
Long. Yeah.
Yes, I'm blown. And that was, you stop immediately. Your manager's going to take over for you. They're going to run some food for you. You take a 10-minute break.
Mhm.
I'm blown means I can't go any further. And in here, she talks about, if she told another waiter, I'm in the weeds, their response was, what do you need?
Right.
If she walked into the kitchen saying, I'm blown, she said, the kitchen gets really quiet. No one asks what I need. Um, they just start, the manager just gets involved. They pull all the tickets for your guests, and you step outside, she said, or into a cooler or a bathroom to cry, whatever you need. And
Mhm.
you're expected to come back in 10 minutes, which I think this is such a great, I teach children this all the time.
Yeah.
We give you a time. So we're not just avoiding, we're never coming back, but you're
Mhm.
expected to come back in 10 minutes.
Mhm.
But there's a complete takeover
Mhm.
of what you're doing so you can step away for 10 minutes and come back. There's no expectation that you're going to push through, dig deeper, whatever.
Mhm.
So I do love that analogy. I thought of that as children. That's such a great example for children. I think
Mm.
so. You brought up parenting. I bet.
Everything's about parenting to me.
Well, I'm like, it's such a great, I'm glad you brought that up because I was just thinking about the experience of um what happens for moms when they're blown and they're at home with the kids and their husband or partner or spouse is
There's
at
no one
work.
there. Yeah.
So you don't have like a kitchen manager, kitchen staff to say, "Oh, I'm blown." What do you do?
I have a baby gate and a bedroom door.
Uh-huh.
That's what I've used is like lock the kids in a place where they're safe. And I have to remove myself and put myself in grown-up timeout.
Hmm.
Like there's no other escape. There's no one to take over. I might turn a show on and like let them watch Bluey or something, but in
Wait,
in
do you
those
use
moments,
screens?
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
We get so shamed for having our kids use screens, but
Dude,
maybe that's a
dude, that's the manager.
Bluey.
Yeah, Bluey.
We need a shirt that says, I want to speak to your manager.
But you know what? When you were describing that again, and I was hearing you talk about that, I had the thought, what if I never even admit to myself that I'm blown? And I just keep telling myself I'm in the weeds, but I'm actually blown because I don't feel that I'll get the support I need when I am actually blown. So I just keep staying in the weeds, but actually I'm like far past that. And I wonder if that's a lot of other people's experiences too, is they don't even have like there's not an opportunity to even say I'm blown.
Hmm. I was just thinking too, there's probably reasons why people might have reset their thalamus or hippocampus in a way that they don't even recognize that, like, what I'm feeling means, like, I was just thinking, people who experience trauma, they are functioning at such a high level of internal distress that do they recognize that I am blown?
Okay, I personally when I was doing like the depths of my trauma, my own trauma work, I didn't even have the realization I had a body to be blown. Like my body, there was no body to be blown because like I didn't exist in my body. I existed all in my brain and I could always think myself out of a problem, but my body was completely overwhelmed and exhausted, but it didn't matter. Like that didn't exist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's real. I think that's possible for like to
Absolutely.
not even recognize those signals that like you're blown.
I would see another place I see it is in particularly, well, I was gonna say ADHD women, but actually anyone with um I'm gonna see it happens a lot more with inattentive or combined type ADHD,
Mhm.
and they are overwhelmed
Mhm.
because ADHD can impact the executive function skills. And so if I don't have the function skills for task initiation or organization or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Self-monitoring, self-control, then it can feel like that happens pretty quickly. But a common, and I'm saying this, I'm saying it really compassionately, but I have a lot of clients that come in and they feel like I am always a mess. So like which mess is a mess and which
Yeah.
mess is normal, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so I really love this book. This book is for you if you feel those things because like she talks about, overwhelmed means an extreme level of stress and emotional and or cognitive intensity to the point of feeling unable to function. But then she goes on and will give you the examples. And so this is one of the most common misconceptions that I think happens is that feeling identification is common sense.
Mhm.
I do not believe that feeling identification is common sense. Common sense, I think, is something everybody should know. We're kind of born with it. We're born having the no. I don't think feelings identification is common sense. I think it's a combo of life experiences, what you've been taught, where you grew up. Um, and some people, for whatever reason, may not learn to define overwhelmed versus stressed.
Yeah.
I was thinking of, what if you had a parent who was always overwhelmed and stressed, and you
That was
learned that,
normal. Yeah.
right? Like that's just how people are and function. Or so that's one of my favorite. I like to I have this little game that looks a little bit like Guess Who,
Mhm.
and I'll use it even with teenagers. And there's two sides to the questions. And the one question is, who's angry, who's mad, who's sleepy, who needs a nap, or not even that one, sorry, who's sleepy. It's naming the feeling. So I'm looking to see, can they explicitly tell me who's feeling what feeling? So many times, I literally think it is 9 out of 10 times when I turn the card over and they have to implicitly define an emotion. So, for example, it will say, who looks like they need help?
Mhm.
Look at their facial expression and decide who looks like they need help. People struggle. That
Yeah.
starts to be hard because now we have to say, well, when I need help, I look this way. And which person here looks that right now, where all the life experience comes in? I love
Mhm.
that she always defines it through evidence. Like she collects, so she's a social scientist. She does qualitative versus quantitative research, which that means she doesn't run specific numbers like take this survey and like we're going to do the GAD and see if your anxiety number has gone down. And we'll count it by how many points and how consistent that is for our research participants. She does studies through survey, like questions and asking and talking and interview, and boils it down to that like
A
qualitative.
lived experience.
Yes. And so I love that. So actually we can define these emotions. We may actually, as adults, need a feeling identification class. Like, hey, you're describing that as like motherhood, but what if that actually is anxiety?
Yes.
Like, but why, how would you know that if all that was taught to you was that motherhood is just like this, you know?
I think a lot of people are stuck in a very elementary emotion labeling like language. We
Mhm.
can say when someone's sad, happy, mad, tired. Like we can label those, but when it gets more nuanced, like she goes in here, that's where we lose, like it gets fuzzy. It gets like harder to pinpoint and narrow in for a lot of us. I think we haven't learned that language.
Right.
This is why I think of it more of it as a dictionary. It's like adding vocabulary to
Yeah.
our
I love um people are always so, my son does this all the time. He's 4. I am so frustrated, and they're always so like, oh my gosh, that's adorable. He knows what frustrated is. That's what happens when there's a child of like a pediatric therapist. Like like I almost feel like sometimes I need to pull that back. Like he shouldn't know as much, but actually he's not my age. My daughter's the one. She's so empathetic, and that like feeds the emotions. But even then, there's so much more to life than bad, mad, sad, happy, excited, frustrated. There's so many layers, right? And we are experiencing them. I would say, minus anybody who's dissociating, we are experiencing all these emotions at all time. We're very complex. Um, our brain is capable of that. Our brain's amazing. Um, there's like, I mean, this is a whole entire book about emotions, like a dictionary of emotions in a way that you've probably never looked at them before. And none of us, every single one of us will read this and learn something from it. Cause like when she talks about jealousy, she does talk about in there, she talks a little bit about how jealousy is not bad.
Yeah.
But we have been trained to believe that being jealous is bad. Like it's uh oh, what's the wish? I don't know. She quotes some like uh proverb from the Bible that we all know, and actually I guess apparently I don't. So I can't think of what it was right now. But
Like one of the seven deadly sins.
yes, yes, envy or whatever. And actually she's like, "Hey, all of our emotions like jealousy, they're just messages. They're just messages to from our brain. Like, okay, so your friend was showing you pictures of Hawaii. Like, why were you jealous? Like,
Yeah.
are you so tired at work? You're not jealous of your friend. You're like your brain is trying to tell you like
You need
I
something.
really need a break. Like, man, laying on the beach, that is exactly what I need. So instead of beating ourselves up about being jealous, she suggests that we just listen to the message.
And get your needs met.
Totally. Absolutely. That is exactly how she talks about that, right? There is one part in there that I think one of the really hard things about being a new therapist, and I like for ER doctors, it's dead bodies probably that's like hard in the beginning and you get so desensitized. But to me, it's suffering.
Mm.
That I think as therapists, you get so used to carrying like suffering um, that I'm like civilians. I don't know what else to call, but like non-therapists. I don't know.
I don't know.
Like they read these articles and they're like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. And to me, sometimes I'm like, yeah, that happens. And I'm not dismissive. It's that I can just I can sit with a pretty high level of suffering. But after reading this, I was like, but despair is the one that is so heavy and
Mhm.
it still pierces me. Like when people are in heavy despair, um, I see that a lot with like the loss of a child. I don't
Yeah.
care what age it is,
Mhm.
but there's some pretty heavy despair there.
Yeah.
And this book helped me a lot with that. It helps me because in that moment, for me to get deep in the despair, it's not helpful for the because I'm like, that is so sad. It is so
No.
sad to
Yeah.
lose your child. I can't think of anything else
Mhm.
that feels scarier to a parent or more sad to a parent. And we as parents never want to outlive our children. Um, and I was thinking about like I can't go into that because then I'm not going to be your most effective therapist.
Yeah.
I'm going to connect with the emotion and I'm going to honor it and be there for you because also I want to be an effective therapist, and be real with you. I loved this book. There's this I think this book is so worth it to purchase. I started listening to it and then I bought it immediately. But for those that are tuning in YouTube, you'll see this picture. And she shares it. She talks about this is a field of sculpture that was created by somebody by an artist. They interviewed and met with the family members of this. There was a terrorist attack in Ireland, and a plane went down. And this is how he illustrated. Sorry, she illustrated. Ellen Lowenstein illustrated the despair,
Mhm.
and this is heavy.
Mhm.
And I'm like, this book is just you're just so seen in it because I'm like, that is what despair feels like.
Mhm.
And I don't it's so to me, some of this helps me as a therapist to understand that these are just human emotions and for me to check my bias. But I wonder, I'm thinking about our newer therapists. How do you think this book can help them as they're going through these deep emotions with their clients also?
Think it like a dictionary does. It gives you language to a word you maybe didn't recognize before. And if you see a reaction or an emotion in your client and you're like, what is that? What is that about? Like, you're just thinking this internally, obviously. You don't have to like say this out loud to your client, but this book can give you language for, oh, I saw that in my client yesterday. And then you can use that as information to dig a little bit deeper in the next session of like, I noticed this like sadness in you, and I thought it was just sadness, but do you think despair fits? Like, do you think this fits more of your experience? And it will, I think, help the therapeutic relationship when a client feels seen by you and you can put a word to what they're experiencing. It's like a relief, like, oh my gosh, somebody sees me and understands what I'm experiencing.
And as a therapist, you're like, oh my gosh, I do understand.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
good. I know how to
I'm on
do
the right
this.
track here.
I
Hmm.
sometimes take this picture and I just slide it across my coffee table over here and I say, is this how you're feeling?
Yeah.
Like, and tears.
Here. Yes.
They're like, yes, that is, this is a great, great book for a new therapist, an old therapist,
Mm. A
you know.
human.
I know. I will tell clients about it and they'll come back and say, oh my gosh, I so connected to this section. That just gives me a ton of information because I am I I don't spend a I'm the kind of therapist that I think diagnosis matters. I know, and I'll tell you why. I think diagnosis matters and knowing what we're treating is important. Like I always think a little kid who's experienced trauma, well, we can say, oh, I'm so scared to like do a PTSD diagnosis for a kid and give them generalized anxiety. But if they're experiencing trauma, PTSD, like that's actually a different treatment protocol than,
Mhm.
and so to me, the diagnosis does matter. I am saying that for people who are not therapists because we do argue about that in our and I don't think people are their labels, but I do think treatment, having accurate treatment and accurate diagnosing is important. And I actually, this book has helped me adjust the diagnosis a little bit for people that I maybe thought were anxious. And I went, wait, maybe this is an episode of depression because I do think sometimes depression can look like anxiety and vice versa. And unfortunately, I don't have a blood test to tell me what you've got, you know.
It's anyone's best guess.
Yes, and we're all, I'm gonna say it's our educated guess. So I'm trying to be educated about it. But when my clients read this and they come back and say, "Hey, I really connected to this part,"
Mhm.
it's a really good book for an EMDR therapist too, because they're gonna say, "I didn't realize how much XYZ thing was impacting me in that moment until I read that and realized." And I say, oh, let's go with that. Like let's set that up and let's go there. But I love what you said. When we can give our clients a vocabulary, a shared vocabulary with us,
Mhm.
we can do better at diagnosing and narrowing down how we can help.
Yep. Yep. It gives us more when they have that information, the client has, and it gives us more information to treat them appropriately.
And the name of the game here is hope.
Yeah.
And
None of the emotions are bad. They're all our helpers. They're information.
so okay, I'm going to read you like my favorite quote, and I want to get your reaction from it. Hope is a function of struggle. We develop hope not during the easy or comfortable times, but through adversity and discomfort.
Mm. There was a time in my life when I hated the idea of hope. It's screw hope. I don't want to hope. Hope makes me hurt. I don't want hope. But I like that you say it again about the hope and dis you said something about hope and despair or adversity. Say it again.
Hope is a function of struggle. We develop hope not during the easy and comfortable times, but
Mm.
through adversity and discomfort.
Yeah, I don't think you even need hope when it's easy. You don't have to
Totally.
you don't have to look forward to that or anything or
Yeah. She was saying in her research that she found through the research that hope is learned.
Mhm.
It's not common sense. We're not just like built. Hope is learned. And the children that she studied with higher levels of hopelessness experienced higher levels of adversity. I'm
Mm.
going to read that as higher ACE scores.
Mhm.
So children with more like adverse childhood experiences
Mhm.
conversely experienced higher levels of hope.
Oh, why do you think that is?
I
Why
think
would somebody who has a harder life, has had harder life experiences, has greater level of hope?
I think it's like grit. Like I think it's survival. Like I think so I always tell there's like this is a Kirstenism. So it's don't look it up, but
Mhm.
I tell my clients hope is the fine line between despair and healing.
Mm,
And you can get like when we talk about two roads diverged in a woods, and which
mhm,
road do we take? Well, it depends on if we have hope or not.
mm.
Get on the path of healing only if we believe we can heal or we have hope that I can get through or whatever. If I
Yeah.
feel hopeless, I stay right. I don't, maybe that's even a wrong because I'm like, I guess you don't take a wrong path, right? But
You stay
probably
in,
just sit down on a rock and you're like,
yeah.
I don't move,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, I think that there is certain parts of our brain that move us that direction, and it is just a byproduct. I think hope. I how I would define hope personally is PTG, post traumatic growth, and that as we do get through, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg. As we get through trauma, the byproduct is hope that we can overcome hard things, we can heal because now
Mhm,
we've seen it happen in our life.
mhm.
And that's the PTG. I would never say that's the thing we're just, that you've learned so much from your trauma. Aren't you so
Yeah.
grateful?
Don't tell
But the
anybody.
byproduct of it is PTG, post traumatic growth, or hope
Mhm.
that you utilize for the next hard thing.
Mm, I love that. I would say the reason that hope was so, like, at one point in my life, I didn't want hope is because I didn't see things ever getting better. Like it seemed like there was no good on in the horizon, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't see a future where things were better. And so you're right. I was stuck in despair. It wasn't that I feared hope, it was that I was like in this the quicksand of despair.
You
Hope was never the problem.
right. You feared failing at hope.
Yeah,
You feared believing in hope and finding out
there was
actually I'm defective.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But hope was never the problem.
Nope. Because it was always there, right? It was
Yeah.
just, can I like we call it in EMDR, we call it tolerating the positive affect.
Mhm,
I tolerate hope.
mhm,
And I think that's hard. If you've had a lot of like our clients with attachment stuff,
mhm,
that's really hard. It's really hard to tolerate the positive affect because you're just like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
mhm. Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot to get out of
Mhm.
this book. You tell me, Tiana, what do you think? Um, we've talked a lot about what can therapists get out of this book, but what do you think other people could get out of this book?
I think it's just adding to our vocabulary. Like when I read this book, I read it as a person first, not as a therapist. I had, and probably still have, but have had a very limited emotional intelligence as far as like labeling emotions. That wasn't something I was taught. Like you said, most of us weren't taught this. And so this broadened my view and helped me like in my own moments of like, what am I feeling here? Like I can ask myself that question and dig in using the strategies and the language in this book to help me like, okay, I'm feeling some sort of sadness. What is that? What is that connected to? Can I pinpoint that or narrow that in a little bit more? So to me as a human, it just helps me figure out more about myself and what I'm experiencing.
And I think for people, we want so desperately to be seen,
Mhm.
but if we do not know what it is, we cannot form connection to be seen.
Mhm.
That's why little bits all of a sudden you like catch something in a movie and you're like, why am I crying?
Mhm.
And if you want to be seen, you have to be like it's a two-way street, right? Like I've got to be aware of what is happening.
Mhm.
But when I hear that, I'm like, oh, that connection. I think this book will really help people be seen because they will name it,
Mhm.
what it is, whatever it is. They will name it and then they will feel like not the crazy one. They will feel like, oh, it's normal to feel
Yeah.
that way. And so it'll make you feel like seen
Mhm.
in that way.
Yep.
So I hope
I
everyone will check it out. It is one of my all-time favorite, most used books. I think it's a beautiful book. I think the illustrations are awesome. I think it's worthy of um I mean, I'm a Brené Brown stan, so that's but I don't all her books are not my favorite, but I will say this one is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Definitely one of those that you want on like your coffee table to flip through frequently. Yeah.
It is usually on mine.
I know when I first read it, I always log my books and like my thoughts about it and just brief thoughts, but I said this is one that's going to go on my to buy list and it's still on my to buy list in my Amazon cart. Haven't bought it yet, but definitely is one that I was like, this has to be in hard copy. You have to have this in hard copy.
I love it. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Well, I
Thanks.
guess we'll see everybody next time.
See ya. Thanks for joining us on the Therapist Book Club. We hope today's conversation inspired you to explore new stories and perspectives.
Don't forget to follow us for more episodes, share your favorite books with us, and join the conversation on how books and mental health connect on our social media channels.
Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, your story matters.